Again, welcome, and as Laura mentioned in our opening comments, thank you to our sponsors. For this afternoon's forum, we will be engaging our Board of County Commissioners in a conversation about the challenges and opportunities facing Clackamas County as we kick off 2019. We will be asking all of you to write down any questions you have on the index cards, which should be provided on your tables with pens. Chamber staff will come by and collect those cards, and then we will use those to engage the board over about the next 45 minutes. So as we start the conversation, if something comes up, if you want to have a specific topic addressed, please write it down, raise it up, and chamber staff will come and pick that up. This afternoon we have 2 of the 5 commissioners who are unable to join us, Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Fischer. And I would like to read a statement on behalf of Commissioner Martha Schrader, and she says she sends her regrets for her absence. She's unable to join us today due to a death in her family that required her to travel to the East Coast. I'm sure you'll all join me in sharing our condolences and sending her our sympathies. Commissioner Schrader did ask that we mention one of her goals for 2019, to work cooperatively with our many school districts to create a holistic and comprehensive system to address our kids' needs. She plans to build upon the valuable services and programs that we already have in place with our schools. So again, our thoughts and condolences are with Commissioner Schrader and her family. Also today, we're going to have Commissioner Fischer join us via a conference line. She's unable to do that, but I believe she will be phoning in here in just a minute and sharing a few thoughts. All right. Commissioner Fischer.
Hello there. I so appreciate being with all of you today, even if only by phone. Thank you so much for letting me spend some time sharing with you what's important to all of us in Clackamas County. I am here in Los Angeles with a delegation studying homelessness so that we can take some of these ideas and better combat homelessness in our own communities in the Tri-County region. As a commissioner, I've had wonderful opportunities to talk to business leaders and learn how homelessness is affecting our quality of life and our businesses in Clackamas County. Just a couple examples I wanted to share. In visiting Enoch Precision Machining, was learning about how the business there by the 205 corridor has homeless people that are camping near site and using their facilities, which has been a challenge for that business. Also hearing, talking with Miles Fiberglass and Lori Miles Oland when she presented to the leaders through our own chamber about the challenges of affordable housing, attracting quality workforce, and really looking at how do we attract employees, how do we attract businesses. It's a critical issue for all of us. And that doesn't get to the human element that we all see and face every day as leaders in our community. Just a couple quick stories. I had the pleasure of doing the homeless count recently, which is a project that we do every 2 years to count the homeless in our community. I met a woman who was an educational assistant for our very own Head Start in Clackamas County. She had been an assistant for 19 years. She experienced a health issue and she became homeless, and she was living in her car. She'd been a resident of Clackamas County for many, many, many years. And when I talked with her about her story, she just said to me, I didn't do anything wrong, but here I am. I find myself in this place. Another person that I had the wonderful opportunity of connecting with over a little meal at Denny's was a woman who had struggled with domestic violence and was very desperate for help. She received wraparound services through our rapid rehousing program through Clackamas County with intensive case management, really helped her get on her feet, and now 2 of her children are attending community college, really breaking that cycle of struggle. So in short, we know what works and how to help our homeless population. We just need to enter into greater conversations to determine how we more effectively combat this issue. The Metro Housing Bond will help, and we will need to continue to use our best thinking. So that for me is a major priority over the next year. Another major priority, which I'm very excited about, is building a new courthouse. As most of you know, I'm also an attorney, so I know firsthand, and I'm sure many of you do as well, how challenged our courthouse is and literally sliding into the river. It's essential that we replace the courthouse. It is important not only because of the potential of the seismic upgrades that are impossible on that site, but that our county is growing and our foundation for justice is critical for our infrastructure and for our quality of life. So our commission, in our efforts to be committed to this project, has made the following statement. Clackamas County is committed to funding and building a new county courthouse. The county will ask voters if they are willing to fund the courthouse, as well as seek other funding opportunities. If the voters are unwilling to fund the courthouse, the county may have to make significant cuts to current programs and services in order to fund the courthouse. We will do that if we need to. Clackamas County is committed to funding and building a new courthouse. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be with you, if only by phone. What you do for our community is absolutely critical, and we must have our continued connection and engagement together to do what's right for all of us in Clackamas County. So thank you, and I'm going to go race to the airport and get on my airplane and come home now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I would like to welcome our Board of County Commissioners to the stage. So if you would please join me, Chair Jim Bernard, Commissioner Paul Savas, and Commissioner Ken Humberston. So as we do with many forums, we will ask each of them to share thoughts and ideas about 3 minutes. I know we have a strict time rule, but I think we can be a little bit flexible. So we'll just go in order. We'll start with Chair Bernard, and we'll spend 3 minutes with each of them, then we'll start to get into those questions. So Chair Bernard.
First thing, next time I'm calling in. And all the tough questions were referred to Martha and Sonya. First, I was involved in the chamber for many years. I served as the president. I think it's called president or chair. Chair. I don't want to get in Wilda's face because she's always pushed back on that. The chamber's a great place, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I love these events, and obviously you guys do too, so let's continue to do this in the future. It's a great format. We look forward to answering your questions, or Martha or Sonya answering those questions. And since you already know that why they're not here, I just want to also let you know Don Krupp, I think that was his name, right?
That other guy?
Yeah, the past administrator is no longer here. He retired and moved to that other state south of here. Where he is probably getting rained on right now. But we were lucky enough to find somebody within the county who were excited to have selected as the new administrator, and that's Gary Schmidt right there. Gary? Well, Don will be missed. If you've ever heard Gary speak, he's an outstanding speaker. He's international president of Toastmasters. And his years, a lifetime in this community, he is very committed to the success of Clackamas County, and especially of me, right, Gary? And Ken and Paul. He recently, probably still does because he hasn't started yet, served as Public and Government Affairs Director, which he's done an outstanding job. Gary's somebody who's not afraid to say no, and I appreciate that. Sometimes it's too late, but I appreciate it that when he's willing to stand up. He's a lifetime resident of Clackamas County, and we're really excited to have him as our new administrator. Before we start any questions, I want to talk about a little something that's important to me, and that's our roads. It's important to all of us. But Clackamas County, unlike other counties, has no local funding for roads. We get money from the state to fund roads, but when we get down to the local roads, we have no money. Multnomah County, Washington County, Multnomah County has 230 miles of roads, and they have a vehicle registration fee. Ken has the facts here. Washington County has 2 or 3 mechanisms to pay, 4 mechanisms to pay for road, and Clackamas County has 0. So we're talking about and are having hearings about enacting a vehicle registration fee. I see a sign there. Simply put, that it'll give us an opportunity to invest in, to reduce congestion and make our roads safer. By the way, it's 8 cents a day or less than $2.50 a month on one vehicle. That's a good buy. You can't even buy a Starbucks coffee for that. So we are talking about enacting a $30 per year, per year vehicle registration fee. We've had one public hearing. We have another one Thursday, February 21st at 6 p.m. And please come and hopefully voice support. Thank you. Ken?
Thank you, Jim. Of course, one of the most important things, and I'm sure for the Chamber, if this is particularly important, business is a crucial aspect of the success of Clackamas County, and certainly businesses that pay good wages are crucial to the success of everybody in our county. To that end, there's a couple of different initiatives that I've been involved with. One is an opportunity to go to China and develop relationships with communities in China. You may not be aware, but Commissioner Schrader developed a sister county relationship with Guanyun County, and I had the opportunity to go there as well as to Beijing and Shanghai and a number of other cities. And we met with about 91 different officials and business people. We've managed to put together at least 3 agreements of what you would call cultural relationships and friendships, because personal relationships are crucially important to business relationships in China. The long-term objective, of course, is to make it possible for our businesses to sell products in China and for them to sell products here and or invest here in Clackamas County. To give you an idea of the import of that, just this one country, China, does $6.8 billion worth of trade between Oregon and China, and we have a $2 billion surplus in that trade relationship. So it is crucially important that we retain those relationships on into the future. And that's just one country. We're not even talking about the other countries, and I think they're 4th in line. As you all know, you've heard this many times before from me, I'm working on cross-laminated timber as an industry here in Clackamas County. And we have made progress. We have a company in the eastern part of the United States interested in locating a second-tier processing plant here in Clackamas County. Hopefully that would be in Estacada, and we're working with our partners in Estacada to try and make that happen. I have a meeting next week with the owner of D.R. Johnson, Valerie Johnson. Hopefully we will be able to convince her to locate here in Clackamas County a new facility. And we've put together a financing package to entice people to come here. So we have got all the pieces of the puzzle there, and they're slowly coming together. This potentially statewide as an industry could be 6,000 direct jobs and another 17,000 indirect jobs. And those are family wage jobs. And those are jobs in our rural communities, which are still hurting from the recession. And I see that my time is up, so I will defer to Commissioner Savas.
Well, thank you, everyone. Great to be here again before you, and I'm really anxious to hear the questions. So the less we talk, the sooner the questions come forward. As you probably all know, my main assignment at the county has been transportation, and it was not long ago that I realized the connection between transportation and housing and how that affects affordability and, what government's role in that is as far as how that impacts zoning, how that, learning that really displaces people. That actually, in some areas, in some aspects, is actually causing a lot of displacement and affordability challenges in the region. We need to be able to tackle that. I think government needs to be part of the solution and not be part of the problem or exacerbating the problem. With that said, 2 years ago, around this time, the Board of County Commissioners, with our newly seated Commissioner Humberston and our appointed Commissioner Fischer, we had our first retreat 2 years ago and unanimously supported an effort on housing, and that we needed to focus on housing in many, many aspects. And I will say that in my professional business background, I've never had a challenge as complex as this, and it is extremely complex. But when we talk about housing, we talk about it in the way of a continuum, from people that are on the street all the way to, ideally, home ownership. And I think that part of home ownership is that American dream, and I think that's something that we need to not let go of. We need to somehow keep alive. And the difference between our county and other counties is unique. I think we offer a lot of variety of housing, different neighborhoods to live in, schools, great schools. We have a number of things that we need to not only embrace and cherish, but preserve. So we started to hear about 3 years ago, the board approved a little bit of money to get a veterans housing project started for homeless veterans. And fortunately, that's primarily what I speak about, that's been a success in the fact that we had this pilot project. We had a little bit of land in our industrial area. It's actually turned out very, very well. We have actually had placed veterans who came in, and weeks later, we have able to transition these folks over to permanent housing. Some have been employed, some are actually enrolled in Clackamas Community College. There have been a number of really good outcomes already. So we hope that, originally, 3 years ago, our goal was to end veterans homelessness by 2019. That'll probably be 2020, but we really hope that we'll be able to accomplish that goal here pretty soon in the next year and a half or 2 years. So we're making good strides and progress there. But I want to remind everyone, really, that it's the entire continuum. It's really about the affordability issue. Martha's concerns and comments, and as well as Commissioner Fisher's, has been along the lines of employment. We have a lot of companies that need to move here, that want to move their crews here. You have construction projects, and the challenge is, where do I house my employees? What's affordable? What's the availability? And that is a big challenge, and yet the affordability is higher, and we're becoming very like San Francisco and Southern California as far as cost. And yet we don't have the wages that support that kind of living. So very complex issue, and I will stop there and look forward to your questions.
Okay. So Laura and chamber staff, have we received any questions in? We have a few up here already. So if you have questions, please hold them up. We'll start to come around and collect them. I do have a few here that I was handed around some of the themes, and you certainly started to speak to it. Transportation, a little bit on zoning, metro, and jobs. So let's take that journey. Some of the questions are a little long, so please feel free to have me repeat them, or we can break them up. First question, we'll open up for whoever would like to answer it, and this is around I-205. How do you propose raising the bottleneck funding to add a third lane? If working through ODOT and tolling, can't they allocate funds raised in any manner they choose? For example, investing in the Southwest Corridor versus I-205.
So I think we all want that one. Go ahead, start.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. We were all the legislature in Salem yesterday, speaking to our legislators about that very issue and also the courthouse. So it is in the queue. You probably saw our newsletter that talked about it. I think it was one of the articles on the top of the fold of that Clacko News. So it is a project the county is supportive. Though we feel, is it not only a Clackamas County project, it's a regional project. So that is in the queue. We are trying to get funding and convince our legislators to fund that. They funded a little bit in House Bill 2017 to get the study going. And then Senator Devlin got a budget note that secured that the legislature would come back now in this legislative session and deal with the decision on how to fund that. So it is in the queue. We don't know exactly how it will be funded. We have a bill that we were trying to endorse yesterday with State Representative Pruzak, and which would basically assign some state general fund dollars to support a bond to fund that portion. The cost to complete that study, I think the remainder is about $420 million currently to fund that adding of a lane for that 5.8-mile stretch between Highway 213, the Abernathy Bridge, and Stafford exit number 3.
Ken, you want to add anything?
Nothing to add.
So I want to make something perfectly clear. I-205 is not Clackamas County's road. We will not be spending any of our money on 205. It is a regional issue, a statewide issue, and we have no intention of contributing to that project. We are, however, working with our legislative folks to make sure that the state does address that issue.
All right, thank you, and thank you to everyone who's been getting the questions in. I think mine were pretty bland, so I'd like to move on to some of these. All right. Oh, these are easy, right? All right, let's change gears a little bit here. How are you dealing with marijuana grows in rural Clackamas County?
Well, you go ahead.
Right now, I could use one of my bourbons, frankly. Well, I think that most people who voted for the legalization of marijuana were basically doing it because they didn't want to see young people thrown in jail for something like that. Unfortunately, this is the classic example of the law of unintended consequences. And once the state made it a crop, it made it more difficult for us to deal with. So as you're, I'm sure, aware, and especially if you live in the rural areas, you'd be particularly aware, there have been problems with producers in the rural areas, some of which are illegal, others of which don't follow the rules, and some are just plain lousy neighbors. All of that has led to us making a decision just last week that we hope will put a damper on some of the worst behaviors. We had a problem called condoizing, which is where multiple people will get licenses to do multiple grows on a single piece of property. That was one of the biggest problems, especially in terms of the amount of traffic it generated on our rural roads. So we directed staff to make some changes in the zoning code, and what we ended up with is one tract of land, one license. That's it. That will reduce it significantly. And it may be timely that we did that because OLCC, the licensing organization, is at the state level looking to actually limit the number of licenses granted throughout the state. Hopefully that bill will pass and that will help a little bit more. Can the entire problem go away at this point in time? In all candidness, no, it's not all going to go away, but at least we can start to get a handle on some of it. And we are working with the Sheriff's Department on the Neighborhood Livability Program in some of our rural communities to go after some of the worst offenders. So it's a multi-pronged approach to at least tamping down some of this problem. Thank you.
I just want to add, it's taken too much of our time. For now, we're just going to not address it any further unless there's a specific issue, and condoizing was one of those. We have one application, is it 81 buildings?
88.
88 buildings on land that we used to grow fruits and vegetables. Now it's 88 buildings growing marijuana. So hopefully we've slowed that down.
It hasn't been approved by the state yet.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we talked about a little bit about transportation on I-205. Let's talk about another critically important project just a little east of there. The question is, Sunrise Corridor Phase 2 could address housing and employment lands. What is the status of this project?
Well, that's my baby. The reason I'm here, frankly, I ran 8 years ago because I really felt that was just trying to carry the baton of future, our past commissioners, that was a mission and a vision for not really a road. Our goal wasn't to build a road and a highway. The goal was to actually anticipate the growth and the businesses and the job potential and everything that we needed. And here we are today facing a housing crisis. And who's got a lot of land in this region? Clackamas County, thousands of acres. And we are now, fortunately, after 8 years, we actually have our staff, and I want to give my shout out to our staff and Commissioner Bernard and others helping to help make that happen and get behind that effort. We just recently got a map. We've asked our staff to produce a map that showed how many acres in different phases along that corridor. So there are excess of $12,000 jobs potentially within that 122nd to 172nd, 190th area approximately. That's going to be something that we want to work closely with Happy Valley because that is in their urban growth management area. They are a key part of that. And the housing potential there as well, it's as significant as almost as many houses potentially we could build in that area. So we want to make sure that we have a spectrum of housing, mixed income housing that covers the whole variety of the needs out over there. So we're really excited about that, where we want to find some funding for that. We don't not exactly sure how we want to do that. There's a talk of a bond in 2020 that could fund that. I know a lot of our legislators are even asking that, even though we didn't go to Salem yesterday talking about that, but they brought that up to us yesterday. So there's a lot of interest, and I think really the region needs that housing. We have 65% of the people who work and are employed in Clackamas County leave the county every day. And so that job base is important. It's also important in our discussion we had with President Peterson on Monday morning, that helps us balance that out with more jobs in this region. So that's a short answer, but we hope to make progress soon.
That's good.
You good with that? Sure. Okay. All right. Given that there is a gap in funding county roads, how much could the proposed vehicle registration fee chip away at that gap? And if you have any numbers to share, that would be great.
Go ahead.
So the anticipated revenues are about $11 million per year, and it would be split 60-40 with the cities, though we are looking at taking 10% of our 60% and setting that aside for roads that are currently county roads but located inside cities, with the long-term goal of bringing them up to snuff and then being able to transfer them to cities' jurisdictions. We've met or contacted a lot of our cities, and they have, most of them have come on board in support. I can tell you personally, I've been out to at least 8 different community meetings of one kind or another, and when you stand up and talk to people and really explain what the VRF is about and what the costs of roads are and the actual things that you have to spend that money on, you get what I like to call reluctant acceptance. I don't ever expect people to be enthusiastic about anybody taking money out of their pocket for the government, but if you explain to people what it's about, why you have to do it, why this is the only alternative, and what that money will be spent on, generally speaking, and you own it, and I think that's important. We own this decision. You get acceptance from people. They'll say, okay, you guys are willing to actually stand up and own the decision and make the responsible decision. We can go along with it. And I had that experience last night at Stafford with a community group who voted unanimously to support us on this. So we own this decision, I'll say that, and I think that it's going to be in the long-term best interest of Clackamas County. Does it solve the whole problem? No. There is still a shortfall, but it's going to get a lot more of our roads maintained, and it's going to allow us to get some capital improvement projects and safety projects done, which are also crucial to our roads. So.
We don't own it yet. We haven't made the decision, so on the 21st.
We're going to own it, let me tell you.
Yeah, we tried 6 times for a gas tax, and everyone says no. Some cities have them, some don't. So frankly, I think we have a responsibility for future generations. Our roads are our biggest asset in the county, and if we don't do something, somebody's going to have to pay for it. It costs 10 times more if we don't take care of them now.
Can I give a few numbers to folks?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Washington County gets $49 million in local funds for their 1,300 miles of roads. Multnomah County gets $17 million for 230 miles of roads. We get nothing, as Commissioner Bernard said earlier. To give you an idea what that money gets spent on, it's 111,000 linear feet of guardrail, 27,000 traffic signs, 9,330 catch basins, 8,130 culverts and storm sewers, 5,000 public maintenance calls responded to each year, 2,500 miles of street sweeping, 2,400 miles of gravel shoulder, 250 miles of mechanical brushing, 180 bridges, 24-hour snow removal on major roads, and one ferry that loses $400,000 a year. So that is That is where the money goes, folks.
So the key part of that question, which we don't have an answer for, is exactly how much of that unmet need will be there remaining after we pass this $30 vehicle registration fee. And that's the part I've been struggling with. It's a question I asked last Thursday, and hopefully by next Thursday, we'll have an answer to that, because it's very important to know what that gap is. We don't want to implement this, solve the problem, and realize we really didn't solve the problem. We still have a problem. It's a little bit less, or maybe it's a lot less. I don't know, but I think we need to answer that key fundamental question.
Well, the solution is $100 a vehicle registration increase, but I don't think people would like that. And we won't, and we're hundreds of millions short now in arrears on road maintenance. We're not gonna be able to get caught up unless we did something that we know people would not accept.
The limit under the law is, I think, $54 per vehicle. We chose $30 as something that we thought, generally speaking, reluctantly, people would be able to accept. But maxing it out, we did not feel that was politically feasible. And you balance the needs with what's politically possible. We felt that $30 is something that's per year, or $60 every 2 years, that was something that was reasonable and that people could afford. So that's some of the thinking that went into the numbers.
All right, thank you. And just as a follow-up, and I believe you covered it, but one other question related to that is, will the cities benefit from the fee?
Yes, they get 40% of the money based on population.
All right, thank you. Mark Burnham handed me a few questions that I can't read because I think he's trying to embarrass me, so we'll move through those. All right, let's talk about jobs. Cap and trade is being touted as the clean jobs bill. How certain are you that a reasonable portion of those funds will be allocated to our county goals for the creation of clean jobs, i.e. cross-laminated timber mills, which I think we heard about in the opening comments?
Martha?
You can't play that card.
I can help a little bit.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've had conversations with the conservative members of the Association of Oregon Counties, and about 30 of our counties are very conservative counties. Needless to say, they're not thrilled with this, but the conversation I had was the reality of this legislative group today is that cap and trade bill is going to pass. And to waste one's time trying to prevent it is precisely that, a waste of time. So what I suggested to my colleagues, and to their credit, they are doing this, look at how the money can be used to do what the goal actually is and not make it a slush fund for the state. So to give you an example, if the cement plant in Baker County is going to have to pay this cap and trade, then let's see how you take some of that money and help them reduce their carbon footprint in the future. Not just tax them and then have that business go out of business, because it's a crucial business. It's the only cement making plant in Oregon, and it's a crucial employer to Baker County. And that principle applies throughout the counties in our state. So the focus has been on, as much as possible, getting the legislature to allocate those funds to reducing carbon. If that's your goal, then use the money for that purpose and don't just use it as any kind of a slush fund. It seems to be moving that direction, but there's no final decisions, and there's a lot more negotiation that's going to go on at the state level before there's a final answer.
Okay.
I'll just add a little bit. I'm hoping that the word is cap and invest, not trade. This bill is, as Commissioner Humberston alluded to, is as he alluded to, it's gonna pass. There's gonna be a bill. I don't know exactly the impacts. It would be nice to know what the impacts are, as far as how many cents per gallon does that increase the gas tax, or the cost of a gallon of gas, the cost to heat a home, the cost to power up a house, electrical bills. We need to understand those impacts. I think it's really important, and that's got also an impact to all the businesses, because part of the reason a lot of businesses are here in Oregon is because our cost of power is so cheap and it's affordable. And we've enjoyed that, even as we pay our utility bills at our own home. But I also believe it's important that if this bill passes, that we can actually keep the money in Oregon and invest in things that, number one, attain the goal of clean energy and reduce carbon house gases, but we can actually have measurable benefit, and the dollars are spent here to spur our economy and not the economy of another state. And I think that having that local control in the state would be far better than hoping that if we traded those credits to another state, that another state would do in kind do so. So that's my concern. But right now, it's really not clear how the bill will actually be worded, nor what the financial impacts will be. But I do know that I want to just also say that I appreciate a lot of the businesses and the corporations and so forth that have been proactive in stepping up to the plate to try to make a difference. Our utilities, especially, have really made some concerted efforts and saw this. There's a lot of other companies that are making sure that their business activities are clean, that they're green, and they're being more efficient. And we in kind should be doing the same. So that's my little bit on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, what role is the county taking in the development of programming for youth in our community?
I think that would be something more appropriate for Sonya and Martha, because
Should we
it's
phone a
one of the
friend
areas
here?
that they've been working in.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
Call a friend.
What role is the county taking
Call a
in
friend.
the development of programming for youth in our community?
Not enough.
Well, so this morning we had a presentation by a group that is putting together a school for kids with addictions and just dealing with that. We made contributions through our grant program to other programs in the state, or not state, but in the county, Parrot Creek, others. We also make personal contributions to those efforts. The responsibility obviously is primarily with the school districts, but we try to do our best. We've been working with the school superintendents in the last couple of years to try to find ways that we can assist with that efforts. But it's very challenging. I was actually informed yesterday, I can't remember exactly what school it was, but there was a school that had passed a property bond measure. And it was not in Clackamas County. And they say, even though we pass this property bond measure and our taxpayers are paying that, that's calculated into the state formula for education. And we still get the same amount of money back, though it was part of it was for capital, part of it was for operating. But so the state formula on how we fund education doesn't necessarily mean that a particular school district will benefit, because the idea of the state is equality, that everyone gets an equal education. So that means they get about the same amount of dollars per capita or per child. So we're not experts at that, and I know we have a few people from our school districts here and the community college and so forth, so they are far more educated on this topic. But we are trying. We don't have a whole lot of revenue, but we could find ways of using some of our programs and in that, I do know that transportation, especially in the rural areas for kids going to school or going to programs, if they have a program that can benefit them or they have a doctor's appointment, it's very difficult if there's not really transportation or transit. So transit is a big portion of that for youth, and schools don't even have the ability often for after hours to even transport those kids. And it's more of a responsibility for all of us, government and public, to figure out a way to solve this problem.
Okay. Given that we have 11 years to stop the worst effects of climate change, what plans does the county have to dramatically reduce our carbon footprint?
Well, we're looking at electrification of our fleet. We're looking at recycling, and we're educating the communities on how to reduce the need for landfills. Personally, I have 60 panels of solar going on my new barn today. Nasty day to be on a metal roof. But, I'd love to figure out a way to promote solar power in Clackamas County, figure out a way to do it. I know that the state is looking at incentives to do that, and we ought to really look at what we can do to do that. And some of that's permitting, making it, or tax incentives to do that. And I think we need to talk to the assessor over there about what we might do to reduce taxes. I believe that's probably personal property tax, or, to promote solar power.
I'll add to that a little bit. About 2 months ago, I believe we had a work session on this topic, and we instructed our staff to take a harder look within And for example, our fleets, I've noticed from 8 years ago to today, the contrast that our fleets have changed. They're bigger, a lot more SUVs are being sold. People are buying SUVs. And we often have one person in them. And I think to myself, why do we really need an SUV? I mean, it burns more fuel. That contributes to the problem. It costs more, by the way. So we asked our staff to take a hard look at our fleets. I challenged some of our department heads to say, hey, we know how many gallons of gas you're burning. Show us a reduction. Show us a plan to reduce that. And we have to look at those fleets and figure out a way. I was recently in California and for a memorial service about 2 weekends ago, and I was pretty impressed with the number of electric vehicles. We happened to stop somewhere. There was a charging station area, and I couldn't believe the size of it. It was probably bigger than most parking lots of most businesses. It was nothing but charging stations. So it's here, it's real. It's a good thing. One little sidebar on this is that we got out of the HB 2017 transportation money, we got some money dedicated for transit, and we were able to, a year and a half sitting on that committee for the transit money, how that's going to be dispersed. And we were able to convince TriMet to step up their game on their program from 4 buses a year for our pilot program, electric buses, to a far greater scale. 100+ buses will probably be the next program they're putting out. So our $100 million towards an electrification program over a 20-year period. So their goal is to electrify their fleet, and we were very successful in convincing them to do just that. And I just want to give them a shout out because they are as I understand, national publications cited them as being the dirtiest public transit fleet in the nation, because of how much diesel they had burned and not having enough electric. So we are making strides and we are influencing it where we can. I think it's an important issue. And by the way, there's a savings in that in the end. If you really look at the long-term plan, there's a savings, especially with the cap and invest bill that's coming.
I would point out that our 2 main buildings on the campus are both LEED certified buildings. One of them also has solar panels on the roof that produces power for our buildings. We expect to do a LEED certified building for the courthouse and likewise for the new Farm Bureau. No, not the Farm Bureau. OSU Extension.
Yeah.
OSU Extension Office. And those buildings will be built with cross-laminated timber, which is a sequestration of carbon process. So we are playing into that as much as we can. Staff are also working on ways that we can, generally speaking, reduce our waste stream in Clackamas County. So we are making slow progress, but we are making progress, and it is a priority that we are working on.
I'd like to just add something. Recently we designated a piece of our land to be an expansion of our Justice Center across the street where Clackamas Women's Services does great work. And when we get to that planning, we're going to focus on the certification of those buildings and the environmental impact, because there's actually the headwaters of a stream in there. You can't hardly see it, but there is headwaters there. So I wanted to just make sure people knew that we've committed to that. And that's also important because of the other question is, what are we doing for children? The biggest impact to save children is from 0 to about 3 years old or 6 years old. I forget and we're really focusing on investments that, break the cycle. And Clackamas Women's Services and the work they're doing has really had a huge impact.
Thank you. Laura, how much time do we have? Do we have time for?
It's 12:52.
Oh, perfect, fantastic. All right. Do we have any Habitat for Humanity projects going on in Clackamas County?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I've heard of, no.
Okay, we stuck to your 2 minutes. That's good. All right. Let's get back to
That one was easy.
That was easy. Let's get back to transportation. So, will transportation dollars be spent on sustainable, intermodal, interchangeable transportation options, or will we increase lane miles by lane asphalt?
I'll take that one. So depends where the dollars are coming from. So gas tax dollars by state law have to go towards roads primarily. Lottery money, for example, is more flexible, and perhaps this cap and invest monies can be spent more creatively, and that depends how that meshes with state law. But I think really the key to that is that there are dedicated funds, and taxes are looked at very carefully, and gas tax is one of those where you need to put it on the road and you can't put it towards other alternatives. So where the money comes from is the key issue. If this bond in 2020 is based on property tax or some other means other than the gas tax, it'll be very flexible. So indeed we can. There's a requirement for a portion of gas tax dollars and vehicle registration dollars that can be used for other things other than roads, but it's a very small portion. So it's really up to the funding source to determine that. And having very few funding sources, we have very few choices.
Okay. We have two great questions to go. So what can you share about initiatives or supports to Clackamas County regarding mental health, as we are the lowest funding county to families and schools?
Martha? Do you know of any initiatives?
No,
Oh, well,
specific new ones? No. I know Health, Housing, and Human Services deals with those issues a lot. What their entire budget is or exactly the things that they're doing, I don't know, to be frank. I think that, again, is an area where Commissioner Fischer and Commissioner Schrader have had a greater focus. We've tended to focus on other issues, quite frankly.
Yeah, we do receive grant funding.
We do. I can tell you this, that without grant funding, we essentially wouldn't have a Health, Housing, and Human Services program of any kind, whether it's mental health or anything else. So it's one of those areas where you really have to be aggressive in going after grants. And it's again, one of those areas where if we go into a recession and grants go away, precise population that's going to need the help doesn't get the help because the funding goes away. So what we do try to do is make sure we have reserves to preserve those services as long as possible. That's the best I can answer on that.
and I guess our suicide awareness, mental health, first aid classes we're teaching. I've attended some of those myself. I mean, just this morning, we got these cards that talk about the various mental health issues and making people more aware that, mental health is a disease. We're willing to help. We're trying to look at where we can provide those services, whether they're clinics and schools. Just everything we can to assure people that we care and that we're not afraid to ask.
I'll just add a little bit to that. Perhaps some of you don't know, but just up the street here off of Sunnyside, we have our mental health facility which we run. So there are times, just to get an idea of the cooperation that we have with law enforcement. I see the sheriff in the room as well. When they come across, our deputies are out there, they come across someone who's having a mental health crisis, they know that they can take them to this facility, provided we're open there, and if not, there's other facilities. So there's a lot of coordination between that and the jail and other agencies. So we do a lot with a little. And I just want to kind of give a shout out to everyone who's been involved in that because, we don't have a lot of money, as you heard, but we really try to use our cooperation, our cooperative dollars, and our other agencies to help address those needs. It's very difficult. When we do, as Commissioner Fischer talked about earlier, a number of us did the homeless count, and you get to see sometimes firsthand some of the challenges some of these people have, and they are not ever going to be active, participating citizens in our community because they have a handicap, and maybe medication can help some of those folks, and a lot of cases it does not. But it really adds to our homeless crisis, and it's something that was really, really important. And so we have a great team of staff across all departments that work together. And I think in the last 2 years, I want to just say that I've never seen so much interagency cooperation, interdepartment cooperation at the county. And we're trying our best to break down those silos, but I would say that what I've witnessed the last 2 years has been a substantial improvement, and that's partly in credit to our former administrator, Don Krupp, and I know that Gary Schmidt will be, I'm confident, and that he will be just as diligent to see that happen, and make sure that we're all working together.
Sadly, our jails are our mental health facilities. And probably in 2012, I think, Sheriff, we built some mental health beds in the jail that we've never staffed. And we committed in the last budget to staff those, and we're still committed to, the problem is hiring. A lot of retirements, but the sheriff and the county commission has committed to funding staffing for those beds.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll use this as our last question, then we'll give you just a minute or two to wrap up your comments, just so we can be respectful of everyone's time. And the conversation certainly doesn't have to start here. I think we've covered a lot of ground, so this last one should be easy. Are there any plans to make updates to the Clackamas County Fairgrounds to bring in large entertainers? Just 1 minute.
Funny you should ask that. I've been working with the Fair Board for quite some time, and as some of you may know, back a few years ago, the relationship between the County Board and the Fair Board was rocky at best. Within the last year and a half, we've actually signed a memorandum of agreement as how we're going to work together. The Fair Board is in the process of doing a master plan, which we're helping them with. They are now working with our facilities maintenance on their facilities and taking advantage of the expertise that the county has. So one of the messages I tried to give to the folks was that we have resources available to help if we can develop a positive working relationship between our two boards. We can bring some of those resources to bear. One small gesture of good faith that the board supported me on was $7,000 a year or so ago for new wooden benches in the rodeo stands. Just a simple little thing like that to that board said, they mean what they say. And it really moved the ball forward in terms of developing that relationship. I don't know where Rob Campbell is. Rob, put your hand up in the air. Rob Campbell has volunteered his services to work with the Fair Board on their long-term planning efforts and marketing and that sort of thing. And our tourism department has given a partial grant to help them on their master plan, to finance that master planning. So things are moving forward. One of the things that they are looking at is how they move into the 21st century, but doing that in a way that they don't lose the history of what a country fair is really all about. But they recognize that they're going to have to move into that 21st century and figure out a way to start bringing some other kinds of entertainment to the fairgrounds. Have they actually gotten to that point yet? No, they haven't. That's all part of the master planning that they're doing. We have also appointed new members to that board, and that's, I think, really helped bring some new thinking to the board. So they're keeping their foundation of history while looking forward to the 21st century and figuring out how they can move forward and provide new kinds of entertainment. So.
All right, fantastic. All right, just sort of in summary, we'll give you each a minute to circle back on anything or just share some closing comments before we say our thank yous.
Paul, you want to start?
Yeah, recently, we met with our planning commission on Monday evening, and we had a conversation about visioning and some of our challenges in the area. And it was just, I think, early in January, I made some comments regarding who we are and who Clackamas County is. And we're not a metropolitan county. There's a lot of pressure to densify our areas, and I really think that the American dream starts with owning a home. And there's a bill out, HB 2001, that maybe could threaten or limit the amount of single-family homes in this area. But Clackamas County is a great county. We have just a vast array of businesses and homes and neighborhoods that offer something for everyone. I don't want to see that lost. Our discussion with our planning commission really boiled down to, it seemed to be a discussion that do we sprawl or do we go up? And up means taller buildings. And I argue that zoning's pretty intentional, and I think we need to carefully zone and preserve what we have. I don't think it's an either or. But I can tell you from knocking on doors that this community loves who we are. And yes, we want to see improvements and so forth. We want to see all those things happen, but we need to preserve what makes Clackamas County as great as it is. And I don't want to see that lost.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is just share with you a few of the things that in the last 2 years we have managed to accomplish. working together as a team. We get along. We also have our moments of disagreement, but we tend to keep those private so that we never embarrass each other in public, and we try to be respectful of our public and our staff. And that makes a team that can work together effectively. So just a few of the things that have been done. And some of these are very small things, but are very important to very specific populations that are here in Clackamas County. The POW and MIA flag now flies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in Clackamas County, which was very important to part of our veterans community. We have community meetings at the mountain and other places in the community much more frequently than we used to do. We approved the Stafford IGA. 31 different politicians signed that document, 5 governing bodies, to resolve a problem that had been going on for 15 years in the courts. The board gave $10K to the Small Business Development Center at Clackamas Community College for veterans. We supported the Senate Bill 694 a couple of years ago for veterans tax exemption. That bill is coming forward again, presented by Senator Olson. Hopefully it will pass this time, and I'm hoping that my colleagues will support that bill. I told you about the $7,000 for the rodeo stands. One thing that was very disconcerting to the communities out there was they felt that they were at risk to slap lawsuits. A strategic lawsuit against public participation is what that is. And it's basically where a community group makes a recommendation to the planning department, and if the applicant doesn't like it, sues them to scare them out of being able to do their job as a community group. We were able to get liability insurance for all of our CPOs now, which encourages public participation, which is precisely what we need to have in Clackamas County. And as I alluded to earlier, we had a Fair Board agreement that we had been working on for quite a number of years before we were able to accomplish it. We now have a AAA rating for our bond rating in Clackamas County. We've done an inclusivity resolution. We upped the allotment to the Arts Alliance by $20,000. Prior to this board coming on board, the previous year, there were $4 million worth of grants being passed out, and Clackamas County didn't get any from Metro. This year, this last 2 years, every grant that we put in, we got. That's called building relationships. Our staff narrowed down our zoning book by 200 pages of rules and regulations. I suspect the construction community appreciated that one particularly. As you know, we've established the Veterans Village. We worked on an agreement with the Gladstone Library. We have celebrated our 175th anniversary as a county. The Hidden Falls development in Happy Valley, expanding the wastewater treatment plant, our sister county relationship with Guanyang County, the Carly Creek Rehabilitation Project, and our housing bond. So just to name a few of the things that have been accomplished in the last 2 years. And a lot of that wouldn't have been accomplished without the folks sitting out here that have supported us. So thank you for the work you have done.
First, I want to learn how to pronounce Ken's last name. For some reason, I've got the mental block in Humberston.
Still got 2 T's in there.
We have a grant program, which I hope to increase a little, another $50,000. Someday that should probably get to $1 million. The purpose of the grant program was that a lot of people want a lot of money and we don't have it, so apply. So if you're looking for money when we start our grant process, please come to us. And frankly, I'd like to resolve the Happy Valley Parks issue. We need to get that resolved, but we also need to do it for the betterment of all district members. And Happy Valley passed a levy for 5-year levy. If they save that money, hopefully the voters would keep that, do that, which originally they were supposed to pass a levy, if they a bond levy to help pay for some of the Parks District needs. If they kept that money and we put in SDCs and some of Parks money, they could build a $10, $20 million community center, which I'd like to see happen. So I'm committed to resolving the Happy Valley North Clackamas Parks District for the betterment of all concerned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes today's forum. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the Chamber, Laura, and your staff for putting this on. Thank you to our commissioners, but most importantly is thank you to all of you. This was a great conversation. We hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day.